Welcome to another episode of Nuggets with Sauce, the podcast dishing up bite-sized insights you can sink your teeth into, served with a saucy take on common leadership challenges by your host, Michelle Arntz. Hey, welcome everybody to yet another fabulous episode of Nuggets with Sauce. I, of course, am your host, Michelle Arntz. Welcome everybody. And I just about fell out of my chair before we even got to the recording part today over my guest and what we're going to talk about. Super excited to have with me this time around, Mr. Ian MacDonald, the guy who has the voice that if the plane's going down, I want him talking me through it, for starters. But I also am just super stoked to have Ian in this space. So Ian, welcome to Nuggets. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I can't say as I've ever worked as a flight attendant. I never considered that career course, but you've put my mind in motion there. Maybe that's something I should look at.
Or maybe there's an alternate you in an alternate universe, and that's what you're doing right now. Either way, I think it could be a win, just in case. But I'm just saying, I could just talk all day with you. We're not going to be able to do that, but I'm sure we'll have you back for some other episodes. But just to kind of get the ball rolling, as everybody who watches or listens knows, I always like to start things off by asking my guests, without using your job title, Ian, what's getting you really fired up in the world of business? What's getting you out of bed? How are you a difference maker in this space?
Well, I had 35-year corporate career in sales leadership domestically and internationally. And what I really enjoy doing now is using that experience that I've built up over those years to help small to medium-sized businesses with their sales process and helping them get a return on their revenue for what I believe to be an exceptionally good ROI. That's what I do. I like to work with small businesses. I worked in the corporate world for so long. I've got no desire to ever do that again. Thank you very much. But small to mid-sized businesses that really can't access the kind of level of experience that I've had over the years. Not that hopefully that does not sound at all arrogant, but that kind of experience, if you want to hire somebody with a lot of experience, is expensive.
Right.
Small to mid-sized businesses really can't do that. So I enjoy helping them out on a fractional or outsourced basis.
Love that. Love that. I love that. That's the kind of space that I'm moving and shaking in. So I totally get that. Now, question, pop quiz. What is a recommended read, listen, or watch that you've got for us, Ian?
Read. Well, I'm currently reading the books of Erik Larson. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but his probably best known book is one I've just read called The Splendid and the Vile.
Yes.
Talking about Sir Winston Churchill during the Blitz in the early 40s in London. Really just a personal tale. I think Erik Larson is a fantastic author, not because his work is fictional. It's all based on documents and writings of the time. He kind of collates in a chronological order to tell a story from a perspective that I haven't heard historical stories spoken before. But so Erik Larson, The Splendid and the Vile is a book certainly well worth reading or listening to. I drive to Atlanta quite frequently, and an Erik Larson book is 7 hours there and 7 hours back. So it's perfect timing to listen to his book. But you have to have a good narrator. That's the thing.
Fantastic. Well, I can certainly echo that. I have a stack of Erik Larson books on my bookshelf. Loved all of them. I have read that one. Yes, they are compelling. He puts fascinating things about history in a fascinating way that you otherwise never would have thought about it before. So I'm absolutely with you on that one. So thank you for that recommendation. Absolutely wonderful. So speaking of splendid and vile and fascinating things, I think you and I are going to dig in and dip some nuggets today on a very, very, I think a hot and spicy topic. I think we're going to get hot and spicy today. But I think there's a lot of things that could be splendid, but are too often a little vile in the world of, and you and I were talking about this just before I came on here, hiring.
Right.
What's going
on particularly in the
days?
Sales arena, particularly in the sales arena. I mean, I'm often asked, what is the most important thing that a company has, small to medium size, in terms of sales success? It's very important to have a good sales strategy. It's very important to have a good sales process, a robust revenue reporting program, revenue forecasting. You need to have a great sales book. You need to have a great infrastructure. You need to have a great plan. But if you're not hiring the right people, all that stuff is secondary. It's conversation. It doesn't matter if you're not hiring the right people. And all too frequently, I speak to businesses large and small. I have access to businesses large and small where they're just not hiring the right people, or they believe they're hiring the right people, but doing so for the wrong reasons.
Right.
It's alarming how much time they spend and effort hiring people and then
Yep.
put little to no effort into onboarding them or training them or coaching them going forward. What happens is after 90 to 120 days, that super salesperson you've hired is taking your salary whilst they look for another job, and
Yeah.
you have to start the process all over again. And it's very, very frustrating to see it happening time and time again, because sometimes people just don't realize what they are doing wrong.
Hey, everybody, I just want to pause for just a second. Are you hearing this? This is the sales guy telling us this stuff. This isn't me making it up, understanding that you can think you can sell all you want, but that's not really the answer behind this. And I love what you're saying there, Ian. You're so many nuggets we need to chew on a little bit here today. Like onboarding. By the way, orientation ain't onboarding. Orientation is to onboarding what tacos are to Mexico. Not the
Right.
same thing, right? And I love what you're saying too. Yeah, I know I'm full of those kind of, it just drives me crazy. They're like, oh, we spend a day or it's the first week. That is not onboarding. You're not setting people up for success in the long haul. And to your point, within the first 90 days, if they even bother sticking around that long, because you haven't really given them what they need. Yeah, I love what you're saying in terms of you're now paying a full paycheck for a partial performance because they're busy looking for the exit sign.
They are indeed. They are indeed. And a big mistake that companies make when they're looking for a very, very accomplished salesperson is they're looking in the wrong places, because the salesperson you want to hire is not the salesperson that's looking for a job. The person you want to hire is the salesperson that's not looking for a job. How do you find them? And when you do find them and hire them and you bring them on board, giving them orientation and a product manual and sending them off to a trade show and thinking that's an onboarding, that's really not an onboarding.
Well, and you're supposed to come with it all plug and play anyway, right? Because you're such a rock star salesperson that lucky me, I got to inherit your entire catalog of skill sets. And that's not how it works either, right?
It's not how it's, because salespeople are human beings, and they're not always motivated by high commissions. That's just not the truth. They are motivated by different things.
Not just
Obviously,
money.
people going to sales because they want to earn money, but people going to sales because they're looking for recognition and career advancement too. And if you don't know what's driving that person you're hiring, you're not going to be able to lead them properly. And I don't say you're not going to be able to manage them properly, because you shouldn't manage salespeople. We should coach them and lead them by example and inspiration. And all too frequently, that doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, just holy cow, we're raining nuggets here with all the wonderful things that you're sharing. But, let's stop and think about that, that I think too often, and the stats back it up. There's been a number of studies, that it's something like close to 9 in 10 managers, leaders think that the issue is money. And in reality, usually the money game is maybe more like 1 in 10 people. It's really about the money. So I think we have to do a little myth busting here for a second and say, first of all, how are you even going to know unless you ask and have that conversation? Fancy that. But I really like what you said there, that I think especially in the sales world, too often, I think maybe the stereotype or the myth is, oh, they just want the commissions. They want the money. They're just in it to sell, sell, sell to make as much money as they can. And that's the only motivator. And I love what you're saying, that that's really not true. So how do we dig into that and figure out, Ian, whether or not, if it is nobody's working for free, but if it isn't the money, how do we dig in and find out what else it is?
Right. Okay. Well, I've been recently talking about a state of sales business report produced by Sales Acceleration, which is the company I licensed from. And what they did is they took 4,000 small to medium-sized businesses and asked them a series of questions based on an initial series of discovery that advisors like I outsource VPs of sales like I did with those companies. Alarmingly, 66% of them said they did not know or understand whether their compensation plan was bringing the desired results and behaviors that they were looking for. 66%, 2/3.
2/3 of these people who responded to, and this is 4,000 companies, you said.
4,000 small to medium-sized companies, yes.
And they said that they couldn't connect the dots and they couldn't understand.
They did not know whether their compensation plan was driving the results they required.
So they're
now a compensation plan. Yep. Right.
Wow.
A compensation plan, number one, has to be meet the goals of the salesperson, but has to align with the revenue expectations of the company.
Mhm.
So that whatever compensation you're playing has to tie to the revenue expectations, and they weren't even doing that. And they don't know, people, they often say, so what percentage salary and commission should I pay them? And they're all over the place, from 20% base commission, 80% variable, 80% fixed, 20% variable. It is very dependent on the industry, but a basic rule of thumb is that you have to make sure that the person you're hiring has an adequate salary to cover their bills.
Right.
Okay. They need a
Well,
salary.
we talk a
And then
lot,
on top
we
of
talk
that,
a lot in this program
yeah,
about like, give them a decent living wage. You've got to pay out of the gate enough to say like, look, the person can't engage and do a great job and be the rock star at anything if what they're worried about is like, can I keep a roof over my head and feed my family?
right.
We start
Yeah.
there.
So
That's the base point. Yeah.
yeah, if you have a salesperson where the on-track earnings is $100,000, the base salary is, let's say in this example, is 50,000, it's 50-50, 50% fixed, 50% variable. If you're not coaching, leading, and onboarding that person properly, like I said earlier, after 90, 120 days, they are taking your $50,000 a year salary and looking for another job. And it's not for money. They're not looking for money. They're looking for leadership, career advancements, and the understanding and belief that they can make money
Right.
with people and a product and a services they feel
Right.
valued by.
Yeah, the underpinnings of all this, like what I mean, I've literally run across people. Now, I'm not saying this is in your world, but I've literally run across people who were talking about like going and putting in job applications down the street for, wait for it, 25 cents more an hour.
Mm-hmm.
25
Yeah.
cents. That is not
Mm-hmm.
a money thing. And even in the higher ticket realm that you're talking about, like stop thinking it's money unless somebody actually flat out says to your face. And if you're watching or listening this and you're a leader, take the time to like talk face to face with your people and find this out. But unless they flat out say the only thing they care about is money,
Mm-hmm.
don't believe that that's the only thing, because you're
That's
touching
the right thing.
points here is like what's being done to set them up for success in your organization. If you want a successful
Mm-hmm.
salesperson, you want a successful anybody, what are you doing once you've decided this is the right person for us? Like, how are you bringing them in and how are you putting tools in their toolbox and
Yeah.
giving them the things that they need to succeed and having those ongoing conversations around what do you need to succeed here and how am I doing with that and helping you?
Yes. And also, not looking at the short term, looking at the medium and long term. I mean, there's one thing I've found out in 30 years of sales experience. Things tend to work in a 3-year cycle. Was a sales individual, a sales leader, or a sales organization. In year one, you're setting up your store, you're getting your team together, you're getting the things working, you're getting the system working, you're getting people trained, getting people coached. Year two, it begins to all come together. Year three, it's flying. However, there's a point in year three where things start to disintegrate. People leave, people get promoted. You've got to rebuild the sales team. So it's like a 3-year cycle these things work. To expect to hire somebody and have them really, firing on all cylinders in the first 6 months, they may well be doing that, but there's a chance they're going to burn out even more quickly. So
Yeah.
it's a slow burn. It's really year 2, year 3 where a salesperson is going to be at their most productive,
Yeah. And yet,
provided they are coached properly.
right. Yes. And, we have such short range, like, what's the average amount of time that anybody sticks around in a job anymore? I mean, in some industries, it's way, way shorter than that. I mean, it takes at least, depending on the job, it takes at least 6 to 8 months to get up to speed. You can't expect it's not 6 hours, it's not 6 days, it's not 6 weeks. It takes months to get somebody up to par, assuming that they're getting the supports that they need. And then, and in the meantime, how are you making that person feel about whether, like, am I getting the coaching? Am I getting the support? Or am I just getting screamed at with an unrealistic expectation that says, you should have sold $1 million for us by now? Really? How could I?
Yeah. I go to trade a lot, and I go to conferences a lot, and I always go to the booths to talk to the people working the booths and ask the question, well, how long have you been with this company? Oh, 3 months, 4 months. How's it working out for you? Well, they seem pretty good, but they really don't have that passion about who they're working for and what they're doing. It's another job for them.
Right.
And your brand is the people that your customer and the public interact with.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much money you spend on marketing. Your brand is that person that's front facing. If that person isn't sold on your brand, doesn't live and breathe it, and doesn't believe it, your marketing dollars are going to waste.
That's a very shocking. I mean, that story you just shared right there, Ian, thank you, is like encapsulates so much of what could be right or could be wrong, in the sense of like, so you're at a trade show, you're talking to the representative at the booth, who, by the way, may or may not have a title. And this is why I always like try to like uncouple things from titles. They may or may not actually be a salesperson. I mean, I've worked trade show booths and I was never a salesperson, right? But that
Yep.
person who is, to your point, representing your brand, stepping in, they are the face of your business. And when the response is, you know, it's kind of like lukewarm oatmeal over here, like it's
Right. Yes. Yeah.
okay, right? There, I mean, if you can't get your own employees on your payroll to be your number one, like cheerleaders, ambassadors, like super hyped about it, you're screwed. You're really, really
Yep.
screwed. And that right there, what you experienced was a kind of a sales, like that's a kind of a sales encounter. And what were they selling? Not whatever was in that booth.
And I went to about 12 booths and I asked the question, what's your company's value proposition? Out of 12, not one knew what the value proposition was. 9 of them didn't know what a value proposition was in and of itself. Because every company needs to have a value proposition, which is something that sets apart from the competition and why the customer should do business with them. And every employee should know that off by heart.
But they don't know why. But that's the thing, right? They don't know why they're there. They don't feel, I mean, I'm going to talk to in this space until I'm blue in the face and beyond, because there's that disconnect, right? Like the hiring piece, you got to start connecting people before you've even hired them. Like you've got to get clear on the, why should I get fired up about you in the first place before I even think about like, why should I give a job application? Why should I throw my resume your way? And then to your point earlier, when you were saying like, oh, and by the way, like your top salespeople aren't looking for work. How are you going to sell them on coming over to you? Like, why should I leave where I'm at if you can't even sell me, you know, your people can't, and don't kid yourself that when you're at these events or people are networking all the time, people are on LinkedIn all the time, like we're all over the place, right? Every single one of those touch points is selling something or sending a message at least that paints a picture of, you know,
absolutely is.
Would I ever consider engaging either as the worker or as the client?
Right. Yes, absolutely. I think there's, if there's any kind of business leaders listening or sales leaders listening, if you haven't read the Ken Blanchard book, SL2, Sales Leadership 2, you should do. Anybody that I work with that's in a management role, I give them that book and I print out the actual model so they can look at it. And if I just say there's one thing that I talk to you about in the next 8 hours, you remember it's this. That book SL2, I think I read it 30 years ago, and it's still the best book in terms of understanding the kind of evolution that a person goes through once you hire them to the point at which they become successful or you lose them along their way. When somebody starts working for you, regardless of the vertical, could be sales, could be HR, could be finance, could be, that person is called enthusiastic beginner. Okay, very high on commitment. They really are excited. They're enthused. Very low on competence because they know nothing. Okay, after 90 days. It's the onboarding. After 90 days, they get into what's called the S2 phase, which is a disillusioned learner. They're not very high on competence and their level of enthusiasm has dropped. That's the point where you lose somebody unless you are coaching them properly. They still need a lot of direction, but they need a lot of support as well. What just does not happen with businesses that I see. Launch the person, there's your product manual, off you go to a trade show. Give me a call if you need anything. I'll check in with you next month.
Right. Like, you know, like, because I think too many times in business, and I've seen this in large, this isn't just on like smaller companies or smaller leaders. This can happen in all different sizes. It's like, oh, it's all over. Like, it's kind of like, I hate to use the analogy of dating, but I'm going to use the analogy of dating. Oh, we're all hot and heavy and really excited and we're making a huge effort to be impressive. And then the minute you got the guy or the girl or whatever, like, okay, I got him now. Effort's over. You know, I can stop brushing my teeth and combing my hair and putting, you know, I can
watch TV and eat Cheetos out of my belly button now, right?
Like it's over. And then you wonder why the love is lost, right? And I listen to what you're saying. And the other thing that kind of made me think of this is writ larger to what you were saying from the Ken Blanchard book is those two phases are a lot like from a team perspective. When we do the 4 stages of teams and we talk about what's the first 2 stages, we have forming, we're coming together, high level of it, not necessarily firing on all cylinders together. So think about this in terms of
Mhm.
what we're talking about here today, Ian. Think about your sales team when a new person comes in. That changes the dynamic. They've got to form up. And then what's the lowest point in that trajectory is what we call the storming.
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to get it together. I'm starting, I'm getting frustrated because, now we're starting to see where we do or do not have alignment. And I know that's very interpersonal, but it's
Mhm.
not lost on me, and I don't want it to be lost on our audience, that these things track for a reason, right? And if you're not
Yeah.
doing things, being very aware, this is all about awareness. Be very aware as
Mhm.
that leader. Anticipate what's going to happen. What can you do to reduce the chances? You probably can't eliminate it, but how are you going to make it less painful? How are you going to make it quicker?
Mhm.
To your point, you're going to have to coach, you're going to have to communicate, you're going to have to give them tools, you're going to set them up for success. You don't just
Right.
people are not turnkey. You
Yep. Indeed, they're not. Different strokes for different folks, and sometimes the same folks for different strokes, sometimes the same strokes for the same folks. You have to be
can't,
nimble in what you do.
right?
Here's another couple of nuggets for you from the 2020 Sales Acceleration State of Sales white paper. Again, about 4,000 companies interviewed, not small companies, 80% were business to business, 20% B2C,
Okay.
all of them between $5 and $100 million in revenue. So not small companies by any
All right.
means. To our point of onboarding, 67% said they did not have an onboarding process whatsoever.
No surprise there.
92%, 92% said they did not do any sales training. Now, sales training, okay? People say, well, I hired a great salesperson. Why do I need to train them? Sales training is not product training, okay? Sales training isn't the like, how do I manipulate my potential client to buy from me? Not anymore. Those days have long
No.
gone. It's sales training is understanding what your value proposition is, understanding and being able to identify who your ideal customer is, and understanding how to communicate with that customer on the terms that they want to be communicated with. That's sales training.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not,
Again, myth
it's
busting, right? I think here we go
yes, yeah.
again. This is the Mythbusters episode. It's like Ghostbusters, but
Mhm.
early. Like I do think that there's a whole lot of sales training is it's all about the product. How to, selling the product and whatever it is that you're selling. No, there's so much
Mhm.
more. And yes, absolutely skankier than you know what. If you think you're going to go down the cheesy, we all know like the used car sales guy, whatever
Right, yes.
approach. Uh, Not going to cut it. If you've got people on your staff that are doing that, like that's got to be like gotten rid of immediately. But it's like, yeah, it's like, again, making those connections. Why am I here? How do I fit in here? What makes this company different than any other company who's doing whatever it is that your business is doing? People have
Mhm.
choices, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of
Funny you should
cars out
mention,
there. There's a lot of
yeah.
appliances out there. There's a lot of clothing and shoes out there. Why am I going to pick one over the other?
You mentioned the used car analogy. I recently did some training with a local dealer group down here. We were talking to their salespeople.
Mhm.
I asked them the question, what's the most important thing that you think your customer looks at when they're buying the product? They said price. We get shot for price all the time. I said, 90 days down the road, you talk to that customer again. I guarantee you they won't remember what they paid for the car. They will remember the experience they had.
Yes.
And until you can change that mindset, the car business is going to be like it was back in 1960, 1970, 1980. So
Right.
chances are today the consumer goes into a car dealership knowing more about the product and the pricing than the salesperson does. The thing that sales professional can do is actually make sure the experience they get is better than they get anywhere else. That's what brings the client back again 3 years down the road when they want to trade up. And that's again, it's short-sightedness. It's short-sightedness. This is a very, particularly the millennial age and the Z generation, is a very experiential purchase
Yes.
requirement they have. A very experiential. Everything has to be experiential. So if you're not building the right experience and you're not burnishing your brand and showing it off correctly and thinking that price is the only thing that matters, price can be important. It's not the only thing that matters, that's for sure.
Well,
And that's sales training.
right. And that's the same as like you're on the internal side of the house, the assumptions being made that it's the price is all about the salary and the income. Right? We got this
Mm-hmm.
myth of the money about like it's all about the money for my employees. And then there's that external myth that it's all about the money to my customers.
Right.
You're absolutely spot on, Ian. I mean, the whole idea of, like, how does it make you feel? I mean, I've had some very memorable, we can all think of very memorable, good and bad customer experiences in dealing with a salesperson. And what really stands out, and how does this person make you feel, and whether or not they're useful to you. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and just for a shout out, just for a little aside, especially just a slight little aside for a moment here on the car sales thing. By the way, car sales people, do try to remember that at least 90% of all purchase decisions include a woman, and that includes for cars.
If not more than 90%. Yes, if
So
not more than
until
90.
they ask
It's
me about
that's
the mirror for checking my face, let me tell you something.
yes.
Like, no,
Hmm.
like all those kinds of, but that comes down to the training, right? That comes down to hiring the right
It does
people,
indeed.
get the right
Hmm.
person in the first place, and then make sure, and by getting the right person, as you and I've been batting back and forth here, it doesn't mean that they come plug and play knowing all the skills already and off they go. It means get the right person with the right attitude, the ability and desire to learn, the person who wants
Hmm.
to engage with your company, your way, your value prop, and then train them on who your customers are, train them on how to treat the customers with the dignity and respect that they deserve, how to be confident. Like, that's the stuff. The product stuff is easy. It's like, I can teach you to type. I don't know how to teach you to care.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. For
So,
every product out there, there are 3 or 4 that compete, typically, if not more. And it's kind of commoditized. Whether it's a car, with whatever it is, it's commoditized.
right.
The person that's representing you in selling that product has to be able to sell you and themselves to give more value
Right.
in the product. I always say in business, we should always add value over and above the value of the product we sell and the services we offer. You
Yeah.
have to add additional value. That
Yep.
may just be in the quality of the conversation or the interaction you have with a potential client, but you
Yep.
have to have more value than just what you're charging for the product.
Right.
You have to, and again, that is sales training, which
Right.
starts with good onboarding.
Right. Which starts with and hiring the right people in the first place who've
Hmm.
got the right attitude and aptitude.
Yep.
They may not come with the resume. I always say, there's a head, a heart, and a briefcase that come to work every day. Their briefcase,
Hmm.
their resume might not even be as full as you want it to be. And that can be okay too, as long, the heart is their values, passions, and interests. Are they aligned with you and your company? Are they going to make that right fit? Right? They're going to want to be,
Right.
they're on board with what you're on board with. And then of
Hmm.
course there's that head part. Do we know what needs, drives, and behaviors they have that underpin their approach to work? That's the hardest one to go after. But if you start thinking about the hiring in terms of, they may not have a perfect resume, but if they're coming in and saying, I really care about what you guys care about, I'm really into the same kind of stuff, I want to dig in and learn. Well,
Hmm.
of course, then the next step is, once you've got them, make sure that you have what they need to get that. You've got to have, there's your sales training,
Absolutely.
or any training for that matter. There's your onboarding for anybody. Get them up to speed. You can fill in their resume with stuff. You can give them
Hmm.
experience. You can train them on things. But if their heart isn't in there with you, or their head's in the wrong space, and you've got the wrong person for the job. I mean, it was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. One of my first real jobs ever was inside sales. And boy, howdy, did I hate it. I was not
Hmm.
right in terms of who I am as a person.
That's it.
Outside
That's a
sales would have
difficult one.
killed me, because that would make me very
Hmm.
comfortable, at least at that point in my life. And that's the things we got to think about, right? It's like, how do we even attract people to this role in the first place? And part of that attraction, as well as retention, is, are you talking about your onboarding program? Are you talking about how you do training? Are you talking about how you lead through coaching? Are you
Right.
selling your
Well,
company on your salespeople?
right. One of the most important roles in that environment is the role of the first line leader.
Yes.
That's the most important role in any sales organization, the first line leader,
Mhm.
because they can really influence how successful their team is. Now, I've been asked the question, can you make my sales manager more motivational? Can you get him to motivate his people? And I said, no, because motivation is the wrong thing. When you motivate somebody to do it, you're essentially persuading them to go and do something you want them to do. So who's motivation about? You or me? It's about me. I want you to be, I want you to be successful so I can hit my number. So I said, no, I can't teach them to be motivational. I can coach them to be inspirational, because when you inspire somebody, they want to do better for themselves.
They will
So
read.
that's coaching a sales rep. Absolutely.
Love that.
You want to inspire your people, not motivate them. You want to inspire them. And you do that by example and by helping them when they need help, and actually leading them and managing them and coping them in the way in which recognizing the way in which they need to be led. And
That
not
right
everybody's led
there,
the same way.
that was an extra bonus. Like that was an extra juicy nugget right there to really think
Okay.
about it in terms. I love that, Ian, because thinking about that in terms of, and I think that goes back to what we've been talking about today is like, I think that the difference between understanding the inspiration versus the motivation is a lot like the misunderstanding around it's about the money.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not necessarily about the money. Is it motivating them? Is it inspiring them? Money doesn't usually inspire people.
Right. Yep.
It's other things.
Best, the,
It's the cultural cue. It's the other things about your company and your culture and how you treat your people right from the get-go that's going to inspire them to get out of bed every day and get over there and do a great job, right?
And I think about some of the most successful and happiest times in my career, my long career. Those happiest times, looking back on it, the most successful times was when I had the best leadership that I was reporting to. If the leadership was exceptionally good, I did better. When I had some poor leadership, or that leadership had different pressures, or they weren't communicating very well, I was miserable. And, and I've got lots of peers that I talk to, my age, kind of my experience, that, towards the end of their corporate career were earning good money. I mean, good money, but were miserable what they were doing. I know I was in one of my careers. I was miserable at the end of it. I hated it. And I acted up and got myself out of it. So, but, I didn't actually,
but the other
I didn't act up and get myself fired, but I did leave the company.
You found the exit.
I found the exit. Yes, by mutual agreement, I think they call it, by mutual agreement. Yeah.
Yes, that's a nice way of putting it.
It is.
That ties back into the other sad thing that, we're going to have a whole other conversation around this, but this is also the sad thing of very few people who are put in those leadership roles, frontline or otherwise, have ever been properly prepared for their job. Like it's 6 and 10.
Absolutely.
If we were talking doctors or airline pilots, people would have a freak out. Like it would be unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And yet somehow, and this is not the first nor will be the last time that I invoke this line of thinking. But again, it's like, look, if you don't have your leaders set to properly lead with the skill sets and the tools that they need, they will never motivate or inspire anybody to do anything because they're not feeling it either. And it really does have that ripple effect. So,
right.
Never mind that, and this will have to be a whole other conversation too, but and the best way to ruin your best salesperson is to promote them into
hallelujah
leadership. Right?
Hallelujah. Why did you promote them to sales manager? Because they were the best salesperson. I want them to teach the others to sell like they do. Well, did you ask them whether they're prepared for that challenge?
Yeah.
No, I just promoted them.
Right.
Well, if that isn't the dumbest thing to do, I mean, the best salespeople rarely make the best sales leaders.
Right.
The best sales leaders know how to keep their top salespeople producing and keep out of their way unless they ask for help.
Right.
That's
yeah, absolutely. And promotion becomes punishment, and not just for the person who got promoted. They're not. But
right.
Again, I'm going to bring this full circle here in terms of again, thinking about what are you hiring? How are you hiring? What are you hiring somebody for? And even in the space of saying, well, it's not like I went outside the building to go find a person to pop up into, say, a sales leadership role. You're still kind of hiring them in terms of saying, I want to put you in a new position. Is this the right position to put that person in? If we're getting the wrong people in the wrong seats, whether we externally hired them or whether we moved them within our organization, if you're not getting the right people in the right seats for the right reasons, you're never going to get the business results you're looking for. Ever.
Absolutely. And it astounds me that some small to medium-sized business are successful despite themselves.
Mostly despite themselves.
Mostly. They could be more successful if they didn't spend 60% of their time doing things they didn't need to be doing, because they could be eliminated and they could be far more productive if their time was better utilized.
Well, and that's why we're having conversations on Nuggets with Sauce with folks like you. I absolutely loved what we were sharing today. I know we're going to have more conversations. There's so much meat on this boneless wing that we need to unpack and dig.
No, absolutely.
Absolute pleasure having you today. Thank you so
Well,
much.
you told me before we started that if I needed to swear, I could do, and I've got through 30 minutes without one profanity. And where I come from in England and Scotland, profanity is punctuation, and I have completely avoided it. But I will put that in my back pocket next time. If I get very upset about something, I might drop an F or a B bomb.
You say it the way that you need to say it, sir. That's understood on this program. Strong language is the only language is understood. But thank you so much, Ian, for being with us today. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you on another
Michelle, as always, it's a pleasure.
Thanks for joining this episode of Nuggets with Sauce. I hope we fed your appetite for insights and information on how to improve your business. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never go hungry for more thought leadership.